Hi friends, welcome to Kodai Linux. I am your facilitator Murali. This session we are going to learn about shell environment. Our novice Linux learner tells to himself, we have understood about Linux architecture, Linux file handling commands and redirection, but still we are not quite clear about the shell's environment. They say about shell variables, aliases, keywords, built-in functions, user-defined functions, significance of path variable, etc. But I need clarification on these. Just then, the shell process takes the form of a genie and appears before the novice Linux user. Alambana, so you want to know and understand about shell environment, right? Yes, Jenny. Let me tell you. Huzur, you know Linux is a multi-user OS. Hence, any authenticated user can connect to the Linux server from anywhere. For every logged in user, an instance of me, the shell, is created. Hence, every user has a dedicated shell environment. Oh, okay, I see. Yes, sir. Like runtime environment of any other process, I too have a runtime environment of mine. In my runtime environment, runtime instance of the shell program, that is me, exists, and in my environment, shell keywords, shell aliases, functions, variables do exist. Oh, okay. I'd be happy if you highlight significance of these. Sure, boss. I will explain you one by one. First, let me tell you about shell variables. Shell variables. So, there are two types of shell variables, namely predefined variables and user-defined variables. Okay, predefined variables are those variables which are already defined and they exist as a part of the shell. When the shell process is loaded for the user, when the instance of shell, that is the shell process, when it is loaded for the user, these variables already exist as a part of the shell. As a convention, predefined variable names are all uppercase. Like we have the dollar, that is home variable, the variable named as home, log name, user, path. Okay. So these are some examples of the variables. What are user-defined variables? User-defined variables are the variables that are initialized by the user during the login session or shell startup files. During the login session, user can define any set of user-defined variables. And even in the shell startup files also, he can define some user-defined variables. Okay, so about shell's startup files, we'll be covering later on. As a convention, the user can define these variable names in the lowercase just to distinguish between the predefined variables and the user-defined variables. Examples could be today, a variable named as today, a variable named as file list, scientist, so on. Okay. So how do you initialize the user-defined variables? You can initialize user-defined variables like this, like flower equal to lily, scientist equal to Kalam, month equal to March. So here we need to make a note of one point, very important point, that is between the variable name and the variable's value, there is an equal to sign. So before and after the equal to sign, there should not be any space. So it has to be exactly the same. Okay, we cannot give the variable name followed by a space and then equal to space and then giving the value. So we should not give any space, and the values can be space separated values also, but it should be given within the quotes. That the value could be given within the quotes. How do we access the variables? Whether they may be a predefined variables or they may be user-defined variables. Accessing it is like echo space, then variable name prefixed with the dollar symbol. Okay, only when we prefix some string with the dollar symbol, then shell understands that okay, there is a variable name existing with that string name. Okay, home means if you are prefixing with dollar symbol, then the shell will look in its environment, is there a variable called home? If so, it gets its value. It replaces the dollar home with the value of that dollar home, which is nothing but the absolute path slash home slash Murali underscore Maha. So when we are echoing it, its value would be displayed. Similarly for the user defined variable also. So when we are giving echo dollar flower, yes, it gets the value of the variable flower and then it displays it. Echo command displays that. Okay. So we saw one way of initializing user defined variables. Okay, that is variable name equal to its value. There we saw that before and after the assignment operator there should not be any space. We have to be very careful about it. Okay, while initializing a variable to a value, we should not prefix the variable with a dollar. Okay, just the name equal to value. But while accessing the value of the variable, okay, for the shell to understand that, okay, it is the name of the variable because echo, with echo we are giving the variable name. Then the shell will, otherwise what happens? The shell would not understand that it is a variable and it would be treated as an ordinary string. So when it is echo home, it will display home, the string home. But if we prefix with dollar, the shell understands that there is a variable called home in the environment. It will fetch the value of the home and replace dollar home with the value of the home. And then echo will promptly display it. Even before giving the control to the echo command, shell will replace the value of the variable, replace the variable name with its value. Okay, that is the reason we have to prefix with dollar. But I told you that when you are initializing a variable to a value, then you don't have to prefix dollar. You should not prefix with dollar because when you are giving something like some name immediately followed by an assignment operator equal to and then immediately followed by value. Okay, when we are giving that syntax, the shell understands that it is a variable initialization statement. So it understands that whatever is in the LHS of the assignment statement, that is a variable. So you should not prefix with the dollar in that case. Okay, so that is the reason for not prefixing with dollar when you in your assignment statement. Okay, there is yet another way of accepting value into a variable using the read command. There is a command called read. So read space flower. So even when you are giving some name with the read command, then the shell understands that whatever you are given, it is not the shell but the internal command read understands that whatever is given to it as an argument, that should be created as a variable in the environment. So what happens? It prompts for the user's input, and whatever input user enters, it would be first flower would be created as a variable in the environment and the value lily would be assigned to it. So that's what the shell does. Okay, fine. So this is how you are initializing with the value to the variable using the read command. Next, let us see how do we remove a variable from Linux shell environment. We can do that with the help of the unset command. So let us suppose we have defined a variable called flower and it exists in the Unix environment, Unix or Linux environment. So how do we remove that variable? So unset space flower. Just like how read command understands that whatever argument is specified to it, it is the name of a variable. Even unset will understand the same thing. Unset will check, is there a variable called flower in the environment? If so, it will remove it from the environment. So after that, if we try to display the variable, it would not display any value. So Linux has a Unix and Linux, there is a behavior. there is a shell's behavior is that if a variable doesn't exist in the environment, it would never complain about it. It would never tell that the variable doesn't exist in the environment, but it would not display any value. From that, we can understand that we should understand that the variable doesn't exist. Okay. Then next thing is like a const data item. So many programming languages support const data item, right? Support defining const data item. So does our shell support defining this const data item? Yes, the answer is yes. Yes, we can define the const data item. So how do we define the const data item in the Unix or Linux shell environment? With the help of the read-only command. Okay, so syntax is like read-only, then the data item name, for example pi equal to 3.151428. Here also in this assignment statement, before and after the assignment operator equal to, there should not be any space. Okay, so the data item would be defined. So after that, if you are trying to assign some other value to it or the same value also to that, with an ordinary assignment statement like pi equal to 3.142 or even pi equal to 3.1428, that assignment statement would fail. So the shell will report that pi read-only variable. So it would report that this variable is this data item is a read-only data item, hence you cannot change the value. So it understands that you are trying to change the value, so it won't allow you to do that. So from this we understand that read-only variables value cannot be changed. And one more point I want to tell you is that you can't even remove the read-only variable also. Just like how you can't change the value of read-only variable, similarly you can't remove also. Earlier we saw that when a variable is initialized, not as a read-only variable, an ordinary variable is initialized either through an initialization statement or with the help of the read command. You can basically remove that variable from the environment, okay, with the unset command. But when you are creating a read-only variable, then you won't even be able to remove that also from the environment. So to put it in a nutshell, when you are creating a read-only variable, you can neither change the value of the variable nor remove that variable from the environment. Okay, I believe you have understood about this read-only variable, and the as an overall thing you would have understood about the working with the variables in the environment. Okay, so with this we'll move on to working with the variables practically. Okay. Let us now work with the Linux environment variables. Okay. So first we know that there are two types of variables, environment variables. One is the predefined variables and another is the user-defined variables. First let us look at the predefined variables. How do we know that which are all the predefined variables? There are two commands to display them. One is the env command. So let us execute the env command. It displays the list of the predefined variables, right? Okay, like shell, WSL distro name, okay, name, PWD. PWD means what? Print working directory. So there is a name, there is a variable called PWD. Okay, log name. So either you can type PWD, lowercase PWD, which is a command that displays, that prints the working directory, or echo $PWD. That will also print the working directory. Then log name, the login user's name would be displayed, so and so on. MOTD underscore shown, home, lang, ls colors. Based on this ls colors only, it displays the various types of files in various colors. Okay, then user and so on. Path variable is there. Okay, so Then there is another command also, which would also display the list of predefined variables, but that command would display not only the predefined variables but also the user defined variables also, but this displays only the predefined variables, env command. The other command I told is that set command. It displays even the functions also. Okay, not only predefined variables and user defined variables, but also the user defined functions also it displays. Which one? The set command. Okay, so okay, it displays the list of all. First, the list of all predefined variables, then the list of all user defined variables, and the list of all functions. Okay, see, you can see by ppid, ps1, ps2, and so on. Okay, show term, pwd, user. Okay, all these values it displays. Okay. Okay, so set command does that. Okay, let us see. Display the output of set command page by page. Let us paginate the output. Okay, so how do we do that? Set. My purpose is not to explain you about the pipe, but I will explain it to you in a later session. Okay, but I want to display it page by page, so I am taking the help of the pipe. And more command is that also I will explain you in the later session. So it helps me to see the output of set command page by page, because as we saw, the output ran through many pages, because it not only I told you that the set command not only displays the predefined variables but also the set of user defined variables and then the set of user defined functions, everything it displays. That is the reason we saw such a big output running through the pages and we were not able to see the previous pages. So for that also we have a setting to do. That also I will explain you later on. But right now let me just take you through this output and explain you the significance. Like all the variables are displayed in a particular way, like variable name equal to value, right? So that way the variables are displayed. So as you can see, like we have the home variable here, its value, then hist file size, all those things. Okay, subsequently I will be explaining you about all these significance of all these variables and their values. Log name equal to Murali underscore Maha. My login name would be displayed when you are logging in. Your log name would be stored in log name. ls underscore colors we saw in the output of env also. All these we saw in the output of env also. So when we are executing ls command in Linux, it displays various types of files in various colors. That is decided by this ls underscore colors variable. So path variable is that is also a very important variable. ps1, ps2, ps4, they are all basically responsible for displaying the prompt. Okay, Linux shell prompt, Unix or Linux shell prompt. pwd, that is the print working directory, then followed by all the user defined variables, right, and then followed by the user defined functions and so on. So when you want to quit this more program, you can just press q. Okay, but don't worry about piping and more command and all, we will be seeing in a later session. So next let us see how do we initialize the user defined variables. Okay, so let us go on to that. Okay, so initializing a user defined variable is fairly a very simple thing. Okay, so let us understand about that. Okay, let us suppose I want to define a variable called flower. Flower equal to lotus. That's all. A variable called lotus is created. How do I know that this variable is created? Very simple. Echo $flower. So echo is a command which displays the value of value, whatever value we are passing as argument. Okay, for example, if you are giving echo welcome to Linux, it displays welcome to Linux. That's all. Whatever message we are giving as argument, it displays that. But when I am giving something like echo $flower, then even before echo gets the control, shell will check what is the arguments to echo. Okay, the argument to echo in the earlier case was just welcome to Linux. It understands that it's just a message, a string. It just gives the control to echo and echo just displays that. But where here, shell sees that there is some name prefixed with the dollar symbol, and dollar symbol has got a special meaning to the shell. It is one of the meta characters. There are a set of characters which have got special meaning to shell, and they are called as meta characters. So dollar is being a meta character, it has got a special meaning. What is the special meaning of dollar meta character? When shell sees this dollar meta character, then it understands that whatever word, that is non-space separated word, follows this dollar meta character, there is a variable existing with this name. Okay, so shell understands that there should be a variable called flower. It checks in its list of variables, is there a variable called flower? If it is there, then it checks what is the value for this variable flower. It will be stored as like a table. Okay, so what is the value of the flower? It fetches the value of the flower and replaces the variable flower with its value. Okay, and then only gives the control to the echo command. Echo just displays that value. So flower would have been replaced by lotus by shell, and echo just displays it. So that's how. So let us look at one more example also. Okay, scientist equal to APJ Abdul Kalam. Okay, so echo dollar scientist. There is one more thing I want to tell you. Linux has got a file name completion and variable name completion feature. Okay, using this feature, what we can do, after typing some part of the variable, I can press a tab. By pressing the tab, I would be able to complete the name of the variable. So this is known as variable name completion. Okay, that is what I did here. Okay, so you don't have to type the full name of the variable, initial distinct characters of the variable, and then initial set of characters of the variable, and then press a tab. It would complete it. Okay, that's it. So these variables are there in the shell's environment. They are the user-defined variables. But whatever user-defined variables I define. Okay, in this session, those variables would exist only in this session. In my next login session, let us suppose at the end of this session I am logging out. As soon as I log out, these variables are lost. So next session when I log in, these variables won't be there, but the predefined variables would be there. So if I want certain user-defined variables to be permanently there in my login environment, then there is a way out for that. I need to define those variables in my shell's startup scripts. But about shell's startup scripts, we will learn in a later class. Okay. For now, you understand how do we create a user-defined variable, how do we access a user-defined variable. Similarly, there is way of accessing predefined variables also, as I already showed you. Like this is predefined variable home, so echo $home, and as I already told you that all the predefined variables by convention they are uppercase, and all the user-defined variables again by convention we can define them lowercase just to distinguish between predefined and user-defined variable. Echo, okay, dollar log name, my user ID, okay, my username. Okay, that's what it displays. Got it? So we have understood one way of initializing user-defined variables. There is another way of initializing user-defined variables. Okay, let me show it on the same screen. Okay, there is a command called read command. So read, okay, and I will follow that with country. Okay, read country. So I have given read country. So what read command will do, whatever is specified as argument, it understands that whatever name is specified as argument to the read command, it understands that there is a variable with that name. So it creates a variable with that name in the environment. Okay, provided I give it a value. So let us suppose India. Then what happens? It creates a variable called country in the environment and it assigns the value India to that variable country. Got it? So echo variable name would display me the value of the variable. Correct. Fine. Okay. Now, so I believe you would have understood about the read command. Using the read command, you can accept a value into a variable. Okay. Now let us move on to the next concept. Like I have a variable in my environment. I have a user-defined variable. I want to remove it from the environment. Will I be able to remove a variable that I have created? For example, echo $flower. Echo $country. Okay, maybe I want to remove the variable flower from the environment. How do we do that? There is a command called unset. Unset $flower. Okay, you should not prefix that flower with a dollar. I will tell you why. Okay, unset flower. Only with echo you need to prefix this dollar because echo doesn't understand that whatever is passed to it is a variable by default. It will think that it is just a string to be displayed as it is. But with unset, you can just give flower. Now you try to recall this echo $flower. So in Linux, as I already told you, there is a way of Linux or Unix, both. Particularly in Linux, there is a way of getting the previous commands from the history by pressing up arrow. Why I told particularly means in Linux only I can press up arrow and get the previously executed command. But if it is Unix, there is another way of doing that. I will tell you that. Okay, in a later class I will explain you that. Okay, if it is a Unix environment, how do we do that? Okay, so echo $flower, it doesn't display any output. And there is one more behavior of the shell that I want to tell you. Normally in shell, if we are trying to access a variable and that variable doesn't exist in the environment, okay, it doesn't complain telling that this variable doesn't exist, but rather it displays null. Okay, so that is what it just displays null. Okay, so from that we can understand that it doesn't exist in environment. But you may tell why it is displaying a blank line, because it displays blank line because whatever is given as argument to echo, okay, it is suffix that whatever is the value it is supposed to display is suffix that value with a new line character. Okay, so here echo $flower it displays null, so it will suffix null with the new line character, so it just displays a blank line. Okay, so that is the behavior, okay, of the echo command. Okay, so you understood, right? So with the unset command we can remove a user-defined variable from the environment. I believe we would have understood that. Next, how do we define a const data item? Wherein define a data item whose value would be constant and whose value we won't be able to change. So how do we define that? For that, there is a command called readonly. So using readonly command, we can define a const data item. We know that pi is a constant data item, right? So pi equal to 3.1428. Okay. So pi, I believe we have already defined it. Okay. So echo $pi, I think I already defined it. That is why it is telling pi read-only variable. Because once you define a const data item, we won't be able to change the value of it. We won't be able to assign the value of it after that. Okay, we won't be able to do any kind of assignment statement wherein pi appears at the left hand side of the assignment statement. Okay, that we can't do. Let us see whether that pi variable already exists. Yes, it exists. That is the reason we were unable to do that. Okay, let me tell you some other thing. Read only. Okay, OS equal to Linux. Okay, so once I do this, I try to give OS equal to this thing, MS Windows. Okay, OS equal to MS Windows. Would I be able to do this assignment? No, I won't be able to do that, because once you have defined a variable as a const with the read only command, read only variable name equal to value, then you won't be able to reassign to that variable. You won't be able to make assignment to that variable. Not only that, once a variable has been defined as a read only, you can't even remove it from the environment. We know that normally a variable, an ordinary variable, okay, can be removed from the environment using the unset command. But this variable, which is defined as a read only variable, you can't even remove it. Unset OS, we won't be able to remove it. Unset pi, we won't be able to remove it. So a read only variable, we can neither remove it from the environment nor change the value of it. So that is the significance of the read only variable. So I believe you would have understood about the working with the environment variables. Okay, both. We are now done with the practicals for today's session. Okay, we all know that sharing is caring. Hence, you can share this video if you found it useful, and the earlier videos too, whatever you found it useful, so that others also can get benefited. If you like this video, then clicking on the like would indeed motivate me and encourage me to still improve. For getting the updates, you can click on the subscribe button if not yet done, and for getting the notifications, you may please click on the bell icon again if not done. Okay, thank you. See you in the next class. Take care. Bye bye.